Hi, welcome to the Older Brother podcast. Your 20s are a little bit easier with an older brother. My name is Christian, and today we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence. Now, before we jump into that, the drink of the day. Tonight we're doing an old fashioned just in celebration of the very first episode. Let's give it a shot. Oof. It's one of the pre-batched ones, but it's pretty damn good. And since it is the first episode, I do want to take a little bit of time to introduce myself and introduce what you're watching here, what's going on. My name is Christian. I'm originally from Arizona. I live in Los Angeles now. I'm a music producer. So I write songs for people. I produce music for people. I write songs for myself. I mix for people, whatever you need. Drop me a line if you need some work, okay? Some of the things I'm hoping to cover on this show, I want to talk about philosophy, something I'm very interested in, self-development and growth, specifically tailored to men in their 20s, platonic and romantic relationships, what it means to be a man, and anything else that, that piques my interest on a given week. I want this to sound very conversational. I want it to feel like you're having a chat with a sibling. That's the whole premise, right? We'll see how that actually goes, but either way, thank you for listening, and without further ado, we'll be talking about emotional intelligence and why it's crucial for personal growth. Okay, a lot to cover here. Let's start by defining emotional intelligence. I'm sure you've heard the term. I'm sure you've got your own grasp on it. Like, this is nothing groundbreaking, but it is something that I've found you got to put a little bit of conscious effort into. So I've broken it down. Emotional intelligence is defined as the ability to understand, manage, and express one's own emotions, as well as to recognize and respond appropriately to the emotions of others. There are 4 pillars of emotional intelligence. They are self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. We're going to start by breaking down that very first pillar, self-awareness. Now, again, this is the kind of thing that maybe to some is a bit self-explanatory. I know for me, reading about this was very helpful, and having it broken into different little sections helped me to pull it all together. So I want to share it to you like that, okay? Pillar 1, self-awareness. Essentially, this is really just being aware of your own emotions, putting a label on your own emotions. For example, instead of just being angry, understanding why you're angry. Now, this may seem obvious. The thing is, with a lot of this stuff, it's often just a little bit deeper than your brain is wired to go. I'm going to give you a personal example of this. Maybe 2 years ago, I was dating a girl, and this was during the time that I moved from Phoenix to LA, okay? So it was a very transitional time for me. There was a lot up in the air, and one of those things, just for context, was my relationship with the church and with religion and with God and all that sort of thing. I grew up in a big family, very religious family. And when I moved out here, I started to kind of stray away from that. And I was feeling a lot of, it was scary to me because I grew up like this youth group kid, leading worship, playing guitar, going on like these winter camp. Like I just grew up as one person, and all of a sudden I'm in a new city. I don't know anyone here. And I had to kind of reinvent myself. And I was like, I don't know if that's still me anymore. So my relationship with religion was shaky at best during this time, for context, right? So I'm dating this girl. She's out in California visiting me. She lived in Arizona. And we're driving around. We're doing our thing. She turns to me randomly. This is a total and normal question. She goes, "Hey, would you ever want to go to church together?" And for whatever reason, I got so upset at her for asking that question. I was like, I didn't lose it on her, but I was visibly upset. I get quiet when I'm mad, and I got all like snippy with her, like it just got a bunch of cheap shots. And neither of us could explain why I was upset. She's asking me, she's like, "What was it something wrong with the question?" And it wasn't until maybe a year later that I realized the reason I was upset was because I had so much processing to do with my relationship on religion, or on my relationship with religion. And I just had done none of that work. And so her bringing that up was like brushing your teeth if you have like a terrible cavity or something and you get mad at the toothbrush. It's just irritating, like a much bigger problem, right? Not that I've ever had a cavity. So it's an example of being aware of your emotions, and not just that they're there, but what might be causing them, or getting a clue to what might be causing them. But really being able to, in a moment, let an emotion come up and stick a label on it. I'm angry. Why? I'm angry because I have not solved my problems with this. Or it could even be as simple as, I'm angry about this, something about this. It's not your question, to use that example. It's not your question, but something about the subject matter that you're addressing is not working for me. I'm having a problem with that. And then that's where you can label it, and we'll get to the next steps or what the rest of that looks like. So that's pillar 1, self-awareness. Pillar 2 is self-regulation, okay? Self-regulation. This is the ability to manage and control one's emotions, impulses, and behaviors. This is another thing for me that I have been really working on. This has not come naturally to me. I do want to share a couple of little anecdotes that I have that have really helped me. The first one being respond, not react. So when an emotion crops up, let's take that example again. You're in the car. She says something. For whatever fucking reason, you're angry. When that crops up, instead of responding to it by just, I don't know, how do you respond to an emotion? Anger or like sadness or whatever. Take a step back from it and respond to it. How do you do that? How do you respond instead of react? I like to use this metaphor of a cliff. Imagine have you ever seen those photos of big cliffs in Ireland? It's way tall, a straight cliff down, and then it's sea. There's no beach, there's no sand. It's just like in the middle. It looks like it's in the middle of the fucking ocean. This huge cliff. I want you to, in that moment, put yourself on top of the cliff, look down, and you're going to see all of these ships passing in the ocean. Those ships are your emotions. You can see them, like you can feel them, right? But you are not on the ship. You are not navigating through stormy waters, okay? You've separated yourself from your emotion and you're observing them kind of float by. That is what I mean by take a step back, and by doing that, by zooming out a little bit, you're able to respond and not react, because all of a sudden the emotion isn't guiding your decision-making process. You're saying, okay, look, I'm upset. That's okay. Cool. I am not that emotion. Let me step back from that. Look at the fact that I'm upset and respond to it. Why am I upset? What's going on? Do you kind of get what I'm saying? Sometimes I don't know if I'm like dancing around something or if I'm killing it. Let me know in the comments. Probably the first one. This can look like, self-regulation can even be communicating to someone. I kind of touched on this earlier. When you are having a strong emotion or reaction to something, communicating like, hey, I need a little time to process this or figure it out. Again, this has been exceedingly difficult for me for most of my life. I'm still actively working on it, but those are two little things that I like to remember. I will say, learning to regulate your emotions. This ties back into specifically for men. Learning to regulate your emotions and be in full control of yourself is like the most powerful masculine thing that I can think of. People talk about emotional intelligence and emotions as if it's like this feminine, this thing that's like reserved for women. But I think being in control of that is such a powerful place to be. I think that's awesome. Also, you can process your emotions however you want. I'm sure at some point I'll do an episode, go more into depth on how to process emotions. It looks different for everyone, but you don't have to process it real time as something comes up. All you need to do is learn how to respond in that moment, because your response and your reaction to your emotions, or it should be your response to your emotions, that does affect other people. And it does, it's important to have control over that. Good regulation leads to stable relationships with people. Okay, so that's pillar 2, self-regulation. We're going to jump into pillar 3, which is empathy. This is the ability to understand other people's feelings and see things from their point of view. We all know what empathy is. We all understand the general gist of it. I won't bore you with this, but the things I want to highlight about empathy with regard to emotional intelligence is really actively listening to people when they're telling you things. It could be them conveying an emotion. It could just be them telling you a story. But really listening to someone and actively practicing putting yourself in their shoes. Again, we've all heard that phrase before, but really practice it. If you were raised the same way and you had the same job and the same stress and the same whatever it is as this other person that's talking to you, would you really feel so differently? really do the best you can to actively put yourself in their shoes. And I think that understanding of their mind is such a powerful little connection that you guys can make. Okay. I won't go too far on empathy because there's nothing crazy. But I will say there was one other thing. So the better you get at empathizing with people, the more telepathic you become. You might be able to recognize, like, you come home and your partner seems like a little stressed out, and you're just able to immediately pick up on that. And instead of getting annoyed at their mood or that not being what you expected, you're able to anticipate what, something that might lift their mood or that might relieve some stress from them or whatever it may be. You might be able to anticipate that an action of yours could upset someone or could really mean a lot to them. Use empathy to your advantage, because it really is powerful to just know what people are feeling. And the more you practice this, the more you're able to identify pretty quickly what people are feeling and what that feels like, which is cool. That's great. Okay, moving on. Pillar 4, this is social skills. Now, when I read social skills, what I read by that is communicating. The definition in the context of emotional intelligence is communicating clearly and effectively. Again, to tie back to an earlier thing, for example, if you need time to process something, you're communicating that. If you realize why X interaction or conversation might be upsetting to you, you're communicating that. I know quite a few people who obviously have emotions and are pretty intelligent and in touch with their emotions. They've got like the other 3 pillars of emotional intelligence down, but for whatever reason cannot or do not want to communicate their emotions to other people. My dad's kind of like that. He's the loveliest man in the world, but I've seen him, I don't know. I've seen his lack of communication hold him back in some ways with his interpersonal relationships. It's interesting. He's so intelligent. Yeah, it'd be hitting close to home for sure. A personal example of this, of communication, okay? I was at a pool party with a girlfriend. Let me set the scene for you. It's maybe 1 p.m., hot as fuck day in Arizona, but the pool parties in Arizona are lovely. They're so much fun. We're outside at someone's house. We're drinking. We're having a good time. And I decided, in hindsight now I know what I decided, was that I wanted attention. But I decided I wanted attention, and the way that I was going to get it was, it's embarrassing, like a toddler. I went and sat across the pool from where my girlfriend was sitting, and I just pouted, dude. I just fucking went and sat there in silence. And I, like, looking back, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I would not tolerate that if someone else did that to me. I'd be like, okay, have fun over there, dude. But back then, I had no idea how to communicate that. Like, I wanted affection and I wanted attention. That's the root of what it is. And I know that now because I've spent a lot of time learning about this kind of thing and learning about myself. And I basically ignored her and forced her to ask me what was wrong, which like gave me that little hit of attention, and then threw some fucking stupid reason over it for, an excuse, whatever I have no idea what I said. But as a cover-up to get away with it, which is crazy. So if you're not inclined to communicate things, you can practice that. You can tell someone, hey, I'm feeling a little insecure. I'm feeling a little down. You throw me a kiss or something, like you can communicate this kind of thing. I will say, please don't go around telling everyone everything you're feeling all the time. That's not what I'm saying here. It's not what we're getting at. View communication and social skills as just a part of the whole that makes up emotional intelligence, right? The most important thing that I hope you take away from this is the ability to label your emotions, to respond to them, not react, and then to communicate them, okay? It's just a part of it. I want to talk now. So those are the 4 pillars, right? Those are the 4 pillars, right? You have self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. I want to talk now about the male struggle with emotional intelligence, because I think this is really interesting. Men and women have different brains, but the same capabilities. And it's so interesting to me because I'm sure you can relate to, if you're a woman watching this or women, like they tend to be a lot more in touch with their emotions and with communicating that kind of thing. And I wonder women get such a bad rap for like communicating emotions. And I wonder if that's not because, I mean, you've seen that, like, oh, she's too emotional, she's whatever the fuck. I wonder if that's not because men are so completely, I don't know. I'm not trying to get controversial, but I wonder if that's not because men are so unable to do that on like a general scale that it becomes like something they use against women. It's crazy. But I firmly believe you can't have a deep, loving, meaningful relationship with someone without expressing your emotions to them and without being like aware of your emotions. Even in the broiest of situations, like take like two frat bros, they're hanging out. It's obvious they love each other. They're just like their own little way of communicating that, which is so interesting. All of this conversation about emotional intelligence, I think will help you, I'm talking to men specifically, will help you in your relationships with women, but also just with your friends and with other people. I don't know. I spent a lot of time trying to think about why it is that men are this way and are so, oh, I forgot I have a drink, are so adverse to, that's the thing. Are they adverse to it or are they like unaware? Okay, we're going to dive into this because I did dig some stuff up. Okay, I said, why is this? Men, as we know, are often told things like man up or be tough or even, boys don't cry, whatever, which from an early age does teach us to find different ways to handle things or to suppress emotion altogether. That's one side of it. I think there's also the fear of judgment. Men are afraid of being perceived as feminine, or I don't like using this word for this, but like gay or whatever you want to call it. Just less masculine if they openly share their emotions or if they're aware of them. Also, this was an interesting point that came up when I was doing some research on this. Maybe it's because of a lack of emotional vocabulary. Many men lack the language to accurately describe their emotions, making it harder to communicate them effectively. That's from Google. Now, at first when I read that, I was like, okay, men don't lack any language. Like it's not, they don't know the words for it. But then I thought about this a little bit and I found it interesting because to tie it into a story with a friend of mine, she was dating this guy and he was just like, he at his core is like a well-meaning, lovely guy, but it became very apparent very quickly that he had no idea how to express his emotions. It was such like a messy, toxic relationship because he couldn't get to the root of the problem. He would like leave her to fill in the blanks, like blow up. She'd have to figure out why. He would lash out and really just use like unhealthy. He just could not communicate effectively. He would scream at her. He would like leave a party to get her to follow, kind of like I did, like just to get attention or whatever. And it became apparent to me that he was doing this in a pretty shitty attempt to express like a need for something. And that was, excuse me, oh my God, that was where the idea of a lack of emotional vocabulary became a little more apparent to me. It's not vocabulary in the sense of the English language. It's vocabulary in like you've not been taught the correct way to get what you need. Think of a kid, like a toddler, whose their problems, whatever their little issue is put off or kind of ignored by the parents until the kid starts to scream. Is going crazy. And then all of a sudden mom's like, what? Maybe they're not even yelling, but the kid has to scream to like get his parents' attention. That is positive reinforcement, probably on accident from the parent, but telling the kid that to get attention or to get what you want, you have to scream. You got to get loud. You can't like just communicate your emotion, which does segue nicely into the manifestation of suppressed emotions. This is, you know someone like this. When emotions are not properly expressed, it all builds up and it manifests as like anger outburst, aggression, or withdrawal. That last one is me. I withdraw. So when I was on the very beginning stages of this. And again, a lot of my growth with this is thanks to these poor girls that had to suffer with a very emotionally unintelligent boyfriend for a while. But my growth with this, I did not start out, I was like raised in a very masculine household, very like religious. There was no constructive criticism on how to express yourself. So I have learned all of this very recently, and I was, and kind of still am, like I withdraw. When I get angry, I just shut up and I don't want to talk. All that to say, to wrap it up with the male specific side of this, it comes down to the way society encourages men to express themselves. And it also comes down to men. It's unfortunate because men have to kind of unlearn this behavior. But it does, I mean, you're fully responsible for your actions and your emotions and the way you respond to things. And men have to, you got to do a little work if it doesn't come stock. You got to mod it out, bro. Okay, so to begin to wrap all this up, why does emotional intelligence matter? In my personal experience, I believe that emotional intelligence, which is again not just communicating your emotions, but understanding yours and other people's emotions at a pretty significant level, I think it's crucial because it really helps you deepen your connections with other people, unlike anything else I've ever experienced. When you're able to come to someone and to tell them something and to be completely like emotionally vulnerable, naked, and give something to someone like that, and then they give it right back to you, it's like the most satisfying, like that scratches the itch of why we are here on this earth. To me, it's like the most satisfying thing ever. So it strengthens just all the bonds in your life, romantic, family, brother, friends, sister, whatever you got, dude, don't matter. It's gonna make it better. Career success, someone pointed this out online as well. An understanding of emotions, both yours and others, helps in leadership, collaboration, and networking. And again, makes people feel closer to you. That's kind of a manipulative little thing that I like to use. Being a great listener makes other people feel closer to you. And I like to do it because I feel like I'm like, the puppet master. By being a great listener, I'm getting you to like feel close to me so I can like, I don't know. I don't have any malicious intent, but it, maybe a little manipulative, but use it to your advantage. There's nothing, I think emotional intelligence is so important and so cool. This is another thing. I think it's interesting, and I want to dive into this maybe on another episode about why it is that men, like where the idea of pushing men down, just being a tough dude even comes from, because there does seem to be this culture of like, if I just like stick my head down and like handle this and figure it out, I'm like a tough guy. And there's this, bro, there's no trophy for like handling this on your own. You're in your room, you're mad as fuck because you're mad as fuck, and no one knows that you're mad as fuck. And like, you just running around in circles. Like, that's the point of human beings, is we're social animals. You're supposed to connect with other people and share these things with them. And I'm telling you, it'll make your life better. It's not going to make it worse. It's not going to make you look gay. It's not going to make you look like less masculine. Come on, bro. Like, sorry, I'm not trying to be. Anyway. Okay, some practical tools for developing emotional intelligence. With this, I want to talk about journaling just for a second. I love journaling. And the reason I love journaling is because, specifically with relation to this, is because it forces your brain to organize your thoughts and literally label them. You have to assign a word to whatever it is you're feeling. It can be really insightful. It's also nice to read back when you're not feeling that way anymore and be able to look at it like even more objectively. I think that's cool. But you don't have to journal. Even just laying in bed, thinking before you go to bed, giving yourself like time to actively process things is very, very helpful. And just even spending dedicating a little bit of time to being like, okay, what did I feel today? What's going on? Another one I wrote down for practical tools, simply pausing to label emotions in a moment. This again, like to use the same example I used earlier. If you're in the car and Shawty's like, hey, do you want to go to church? And you're like, fuck off. And she can't tell you why. And it's not because of the question. It's because you don't know if you believe in God anymore. Like, take a step back for a second, look at it. And that's pretty obvious. Like, you can, if you train yourself to be able to look at that kind of thing, it becomes pretty apparent. So sit down, Label your emotions and then respond, not react. You knew it was coming. And then active listening. This is another tool. This is very easy to do. When someone's talking, shut up. Don't think about what you're going to say next. Listen to every word that's coming out of their mouth. Imagine you are this person in this situation. Like actually do that. Everyone says put yourself in the other person's shoes, but like actually do that once. It's really, really enlightening. And also, the more you understand your emotions, the more you understand other people's emotions. And the more you understand their emotions, the more you understand your emotions. And you see this like Venn diagram of this person's different than me, but I see the similarities that we have with this emotion that we're feeling, whatever it is. A couple things to remember, though. First thing, emotional intelligence isn't about being overly emotional. It's about understanding your emotions. It's not about being like some sad sack, crying all the time, talking to everyone about everything that's going on. I'm not asking you to like give up, your independence to go talk to everyone about everything. I'm asking you to develop an understanding of what is going on in your head, because you are an observer of these things in your head. You really it's cool. You get to experience that and look at them and grow in that, which is cool. Also, another very important thing, emotional intelligence is not, and I can attest to this, is not innate. You are not just born with it. You can, if you have a family environment growing up that is like very conscious of that kind of thing, that's great. What a beautiful thing. But most of us don't. So it's something that you grow and develop over the years, just like any other skill, which is cool. That to me is exciting. Why does this matter in your 20s specifically? A couple of reasons, in my opinion. The 20s are such a formative, and I'm barely into my 20s, okay? The 20s are such a formative time for relationships, for career building, for self-discovery, and emotional intelligence, and really working on growing that throughout this time will set you up for success, dude. Like in relationships, I don't know. I could go on a tangent about that, but timing of relationships is so important. And if you like fumbled one because you didn't know how to communicate or how to listen to her or whatever it is, it helps with relationships, and that's important in your 20s, whether it's platonic or not. Another thing, this isn't necessarily just about your 20s, but think about if you plan on it, when you have kids. This is the kind of thing, we just touched on this. This is the kind of thing that you can potentially pass down to them. Raising kids in an environment that is very, you're an emotionally intelligent person, so is your partner, and you're raising your kids in that, you're giving them such a huge advantage in the world because you've already learned like what you got to go through with that, I don't know. I mean, I don't have kids. It's going to be a long time before I do, but I like to think that I'm going to set them up for success because I have found my way so far on a good path. And then learning emotional intelligence now can set the stage for healthier relationships and better decision-making later. That is about all I have. I do have a challenge for you guys if you're up for it. Just for the next week, I want you to take 5 minutes at the end of each day to reflect, what emotions did I feel today? What triggered them? What brought them on? What do they feel like? What are they called? Take a second. You don't have to write anything down. Just like sit. Could be on your drive home. Could be before you go to bed. Sit and think about, what big emotions did I feel today? And where did they come from? What's going on? Just by analyzing that, just by listening to this, you're taking it's such a huge step of growth to even be thinking about this kind of thing. And I have to have my mom remind me of that all the time. She's like, the fact that you're like thinking about this at this age is awesome. Like, just be proud of yourself for that. You're doing good. You're on the right path. Another question, what is one emotion that you have felt today? Feel free to send me a little DM on Instagram. It could be goofy. It could be fucking around. I don't really care. Send me a little DM. It's at Older Brother Pod on Instagram and TikTok if you feel like following. And if you enjoyed this podcast, if you found it helpful at all, please like and share it with someone you think would enjoy it. And thanks again so much for listening. This is the first episode of hopefully very many, and love you so much, and talk to you on Tuesday.